But the fact that I'm not as clean as I ought to be does not mean that I'm blind to issues of corruption. In Uhuru's administration, unless the chief priest of corruption, because if it is NSSF, if it is this one, NHIF or KPC, it ends somewhere. And that is where we ought to ask ourselves, where does the money go? And we live in this country, unless we are pretending that all of a sudden we have just arrived on Monday and on Thursday we are here at KTF. Otherwise we know the chief priest of corruption.
And when we are talking about monies and where it is going, we also have the issue that is before Parliament in regards to some of the machines that were given to counties, which were supposed to cost 38 billion, but are now costing Kenyan 63 billion. Yet, we have not been told what's the difference. We have machines that are in certain counties that, one, cannot be operated because there is no electricity, and two, because they do not have operators. Joy Mdivo, does this speak to the kind of leadership we have where we are purchasing things? I mean, if I was to buy something for my own house, I would not buy something that is electric when I know there is no electricity in my house. I mean, that's just a misplacement of priorities. Are we under blind leadership of some sort?
There's a weakness that we have in Kenyan society, in leadership especially, where I don't think we have thought that goes into the process. So when the politicians are campaigning, they make certain promises and they say, you know what, this is something that we're going to do, we are going to deliver this when we're elected. But they ought to have think tanks and machinery behind them to find out how can we make these things possible. Now, unfortunately, in Kenya, we are bamboozled by Ramzatas, you know. We've been treated, forget even about what the government is doing with the big machinery. Think about people who have unveiled ambulances, they have unveiled bridges. You know, we just throw things together like a magpie. We collect all the shiny little things and we just sit there and we get very excited by these shiny little things we have. Now, when we came to getting this equipment, it was excellent because we want to get services directly to the people. But nobody thought about, for example, the gap about the operators. That goes back to our education system, to the training. What are we producing? We're talking about people having unemployment, but we have people who can be trained to operate this machinery. But are they getting the training that they need? So this entire thought process was not put together. And that's why you end up with something being a white elephant. Once you already signed the lease that we will take your machinery, whether we'll buy it or we'll lease it, but you've already signed the lease, the money starts rolling. And that's what we learned with Anglo leasing. It does not matter that it did not benefit us. It did not do what it was supposed to do. If you must service that debt, you must pay for it. And we've gotten to a place now, I'm seeing people being taken to China and being given courses to come back and become radiologists. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, but this thing has been sitting in the county. Now probably the warranties are running out. Probably the machinery, the technology is becoming obsolete.
Phased out.
And now we are stuck with these things, and there's no sadder place like when you go to Kenyatta, for example, and you see this huge machinery that now stopped working because the parts are no longer being made. Or the one guy who used to know how to service it retired. Kenya needs to, we need to think about things holistically, and not just, we made a promise, let's say we deliver.
I see in terms of
yeah. What on this country is going to deliver general level. So this must have been given to hospitals where there is. And once we level such, I mean, we peddle such a lies, then we are misusing the opportunity we are getting to discuss pertinent issues. Then number two, what we need also to understand, the county government and the national government are supposed to work in a partnership, not in competition. And we also need to understand why governors, once they have been given the machinery, why are they not employing the people to operate the machines? Because there was a problem. The problem is the governor was not given the money to buy the machine so that he can eat some. And then, because you gave him the machine, he wanted to take some money, then he says, okay, fine. throw it there, I will not use it. We need to understand and to look at where the problem is and not to go back and say the government puzzled or used or misused the money. Maybe there's somebody somewhere who is making this money to go to waste for a purpose or for a reason because they never gained. And we need to understand the problem where it is so that we address it. But the moment we put politics into it, the person who is going to suffer is the end user, who is the common mwanaiji. If a machine was brought to Kitui, which is a level 4 hospital, or in Mwingi level 4 hospital, we have a governor who is in Kitui. They have been given money for health. What do they do with that? And I want to thank my governor, who has done so well. All the machines in Mwingi hospital are working. And she has made sure that she has hired officers to operate them. So if there's any machine which is not operating in Shelegani, then Honorable Kirwa needs to grab the collar of his governor and not to come to the president and say, the governor, you misused the money. So we are not getting the value for our money because we created monsters in our counties and we devolved some services with people who are not even aware of what to do with the services.
Back actually to the debate we had earlier on impunity, because then if that is the case, then we have governors who are literally killing their own constituents for the sake of the profit that they did not make out of the machines.
Well, I think Mheshimiwa Mutambo started very well that there was a mismatch or there was no communication between the central government and the devolved units. And I think that is where the truth ends. Because how do you procure all these machines without communication with the recipients of these machines so that they prepare the requisite human resource capacity for them to operate these machines? Number two, look at wastage in government. Remember the issue of Changuli that was running in the news last evening and this morning. It was only 14 million. Now it is 64 million.
Correct.
Now, what has happened? There is 50 million more that will eventually be paid to the parents or even to the people who will have, who will be heirs to the current parents. And yet, if the government had paid those children some time back,
it was 14.
It was only 14 million shillings. Now it is 64. What happens is that the government is inviting wastage, is inviting problems. Because today we are talking about domestic debt, we are talking about external debt, but there is another debt that we are not talking. Suppliers and contractors have not been paid, and it is going up. And the government in the next 7 years may not be able to operate unless there is a magic.
So is that down purely to competence? Do we have
it is not lack of competence, corruption, and a lack of effective leadership. Those two things. Corruption, if you fight corruption and there is effective leadership, you should have the capacity to talk to the governor. The governor also must have the humility to talk to the central government. And if there is communication, some of these things will be evened out. So, and the issue is, even the person who procured all these machines for all the counties must have also been looking for a big cut. So the governor may be corrupt on the other side, but even from central government, we cannot say they are blameless.
Okay. Joab Divo, we'll have your closing comments and possibly the way forward for Kenyans. In another 5 years, we're going to be electing leaders. But one of the things that concerns me is that we have a very high turnover of leaders. We fire them quite fast, but we seem to have the same problems coming in. So is this something that we are likely to solve with leadership, or do we just need to have a whole value system introduced to our system in a method that I don't know how, because it's not our schools, it's not our churches, we all have issues. If we look at churches, there are those who raise concerns. Why are you receiving money that you don't know where it's coming from? And this is meant to be like the moral gauge for the country.
I mean, I'm a church person, and every Sunday we receive money from people who we don't know where it came from. When you go to church and you give offering, does your pastor ask every congregant, where did you get your money from? So sometimes some of these things, I mean, if somebody has walked through the door, you're supposed to tell them, you're not fit for the kingdom, so get out of here. We're told, everybody come in. Anyway, but church is beside the point. That's what I'm talking about today.
Not here to preach.
But the question you've asked is very pertinent. And I think I've said it here before. Kenyans need to want more for themselves, because we are behaving like a person who's in an abusive relationship, and when you have a chance to leave and you form a new relationship, you still find somebody who still abuses you. We have to raise the standard. And how do you do this? Just common sense. Examine the lives of the people